of the main roles in Agile, but there are some other key roles that aren't specifically called out in Agile that we wanted to talk about and teach you what their responsibilities and duties would be within Agile projects. First, we're going to start with a quick review. We're going to talk about the three roles we've already talked about. The first one is the product owner. That's the person that's bringing that business vision to that development team, to the team. They're including what the business needs and why they need it. The next role is the development team. They're the one that's thinking through and coming up with that technical vision of the solution, as well as designing what that technical aspect would look like. They're a self-organizing team, meaning people will join them and get pulled into their development team as needed for that particular solution. If they need an architect to help them do some architectural design, they can pull in an architect. They need a quality assurance person to help them do testing, they pull in a quality assurance person. So they're very self-organizing. And that development team is determining how. The product owner brought the what and the why. The development team is determining the how. And the third role that we taught you about is the Scrum Master. They're the servant leader to the team. They're there to help facilitate the events and remove impediments for the team to help the team move forward and head towards that eventual solution. So what are some of these other Agile roles? Well, the first one is the project sponsor. We're going to go into each of these roles in detail as we move on, but I at least want to give you a high-level description of what that role is. So the project sponsor is the one that's putting up the budgeting for this project. They're ultimately the one that is saying, yes, this project will provide value, or this solution will provide value to the business. So we have the project sponsor. We also have business leaders. This is any type of business management or leadership roles, executives on the business side. We also have our subject matter experts, or our senior users. So those people that have been on the team a long time, they understand the technology, they understand the processes, and they get it. And then we have the other business users, maybe new users or users that are newer to the team or haven't gotten up to the senior subject matter expert level. So these are 4 other Agile roles, and all 4 of these roles actually communicate directly with the product owner. That product owner, remember, is coming up with the business vision. They're understanding what the business needs and why they need it. Well, these 4 roles help them to achieve that. They help to give them guidance. But there's actually another role we need to talk about, and that is technology leaders. So technology leaders are those managers of technology, IT managers, or supervisors or executives in the IT side and the technology side. Both the technology leaders as well as the business leaders also work with the development team and the Scrum Master. So those business leaders have the dual role of helping both the product owner as well as the Scrum Master and development team. So now we've introduced the 5 roles that we're going to dive deeper into, and that's the project sponsor, business leaders, technology leaders, the subject matter experts / senior users, as well as the business users. We're going to dive into each of these roles in the next lectures throughout this section. The first role that we're going to dive into more is the project sponsor. Their main objective is to approve that project and the budget. They're the one that's championing this whole thing. They're the one that has the idea of the big picture, and they are saying that this solution is going to provide value to the business or the organization, and we definitely want to invest our time and money to move forward and achieve that solution. With that project sponsor is helping to shape that project need and the outcomes. Obviously, they need to make sure that that project and that solution that's being developed will fit within that big picture view and will provide that value that they've determined. As a project sponsor, you're more aligned with the company objectives and their goals and kind of the vision of the company and where it's going. And so the project sponsor is also there to ensure that that project stays aligned to those company objectives. From a ceremony perspective or an Agile meeting perspective, The project sponsor isn't expected to go to all the various ceremonies on a sprint basis. Instead, the big ones that they should be participating in are the sprint reviews or other feedback demos. Now remember, the sprint review is where the team is demoing what they've completed as part of that sprint. It's important for that project sponsor to be involved and see how that solution is being developed. That will help them make sure that it's shaping towards the needs and the outcomes of what they've identified, as well as that it's keeping aligned with the company objectives. One little thing that project sponsors can do that really help the Agile team is recognizing them for their quality work. So when things are going well, when things and team members do well, giving them that little bit of recognition goes a long way. It means a lot to those team members that are working hard, sprint in and sprint out. Another thing that the project sponsor needs to ensure they're doing is encouraging cross-team and cross-department collaboration. There's a lot of open communication and open dialogue in Agile. And with the development team, they're self-organizing. But to be self-organizing, they have to really be encouraged, or at least told that they can talk to those other teams and talk to those other departments and pull in people that they need to meet their objectives. And the project sponsor also helps provide perspective on that product impact and use. This could be throughout the various sprints and at the sprint reviews, telling the team kind of how that product will be impacting the business. Ultimately, how would those users be using that product and that feature in order to meet those various objectives and the value that was originally determined as part of the project and the solution. The next role that we're going to break down is the role of the business leader. This is the business management or business executives within the organization. One of their responsibilities that's extremely important is just making sure they have an open mind and they're enabling access to their various business resources, whether that be their management team, their supervisors, their subject matter experts, their users, or other business resources that are necessary to help make sure that that solution meets those business needs. That Agile team will need support. They will have questions that come up, that they will need business resources that they can reach out to. And it's just really important for those leaders to really enable access and not frown upon or slap the hand of somebody from the Agile team that's reaching out to a random business resource to get an answer to a question they have. Kind of one of the main things a business leader is going to do as well is provide the needs of management. That product owner may have a really good perspective of to how users potentially are going to work with the solution, but managers have needs too, leaders have needs too. They have various reports or other elements of that solution that they need to come out of that. They have user stories of their own that they need to have completed. So it's important that those leaders are providing those user stories, or at least the business need of theirs, to that product owner. Throughout the project, that business leader is also there to ensure that those user story results are creating value for the business. Sometimes Agile teams can get too much into checking the boxes and basically completing various user stories that they may not be really validating that those user stories that are being completed are actually creating value for the business. You got to make sure that when somebody is utilizing the feature, that product, that user story helped create, that is actually doing something to move the needle forward for the business. So that business leader is there to really ensure that the results that are coming out of the project, ultimately that solution, are being able to be utilized or will be able to be utilized by the business, and it will create value for them. And because the business leader has access to various other resources, as well as has a little bit more pull within the organization, they help to resolve a lot of impediments, or at least help escalate the resolution of various impediments. Just like with the project sponsor, it's really important for business leaders to participate in sprint reviews. It's really important that the person that's giving them needs, which the business leaders are giving them the needs of the management, that they're there to validate that the solution that's being determined will actually give them the value and solve that particular need. So really important that business leaders are attending the sprint reviews as well as other feedback demos that may be scheduled. Another thing the business leaders really want to make sure they're doing is that they're encouraging that cross-team and cross-department collaboration for the same reasons we mentioned for the project sponsor, as well as kind of tying it into the enabling access to the business resources. It's just important that the development team and that Agile team as a whole has access to the resources they need to meet the needs of the business through that eventual solution. And last but not least, it's really nice when business leaders are able to acknowledge team successes. It helps the team be able to achieve those successes over and over, but also they're just to provide support. If questions are coming up, that type of thing, they can help just to provide that support, provide that leadership, that management, that guidance that's needed to keep the team moving forward. So we've looked at the business leaders. Now let's look at the technology leaders. These are the various IT managers, directors, or executives of technology. The number one thing that technology leaders need to make sure they're doing, if they don't do anything else, this is number one, and that is hiring the right team members with the right skill sets. In Agile, every team member has to be able to produce on their own. They need to be able to solve little problems that come up, hiccups that come up, and they need to be able to collaborate and work with other team members in order to help the team create that solution and solve that business problem. And all of that starts with our technology leaders, the people that are hiring those team members, making sure that those team members will be able to fit within the team and collaborate and work with the team, so it's a good mesh there, but also has the right skill set and understanding of the needs of the organization as well as the eventual solution product. Now that they've hired the right people, it's time for them to give up control. They need to empower, trust, and support the team. Sometimes this is one of the hardest things for technology leaders, is really to get the right person in the role and then empower and trust them that they're going to move forward as the technology leader would expect. But that's really truly what's needed from our leaders in an Agile team. Similar to what the business was doing, the technology leader also needs to ensure that access to various resources on the technology side are also available for all the same reasons. That Agile team needs to be able to move things forward. They need to be able to get their questions answered quickly. So they need access to the resources to help them do that. And like the business leaders, they are also escalating any type of impediment resolutions that are needed with their various contacts, or using their pull within the organization to help move those through quicker. They're also participating in sprint reviews and other feedback demos. Again, very important, even from a technology leader standpoint, because the way things are being developed, that technology leader wants to make sure they're being developed in a way that's going to be sustainable from a technology standpoint. So they're there to help just validate that the way the solution is coming together makes sense from a tech perspective. They're also there to encourage that cross-team, cross-department collaboration. That's really a full executive level thing. Everybody from technology to the project sponsor to the business leaders, everybody needs to be really encouraging collaboration. And as well, same as the business side, we want the technology leaders there to acknowledge team successes and resolve any type of conflicts that come up. If some type of issue comes up with the people in that Agile team, help resolve that, help work through that, and get that team back in line and make sure that they are there isn't any type of elephant in the room or animosity between those various team members. And then last but not least, we kind of alluded to this a little bit, but we want to make sure that those technology leaders are validating that that solution's aligned with organizational standards. So whether that be architectural standards or just coding standards or process standards, whatever those standards have been put in place, those technology leaders are very familiar with them, or maybe they even helped them come up with them, and they're making sure that organization is sticking to those standards with the solution that's being developed. Now that we've talked about the leadership roles, being the project sponsor, the business leaders, and the technology leaders. And we've talked about their responsibilities and some of the things that they should do to help encourage a positive and successful Agile team. Here are some things that are done that are detractors from that. These are things that negatively affect the team as well as the Agile project. And the number one thing is leadership demanding mid-sprint changes. That is by far the most stressful situation for a project team. And I know a lot of people will say, well, wait a minute, I get it, but aren't these teams supposed to be able to adapt? Aren't they supposed to be fluid and just kind of go with the change? Well, yes, but that sprint has been committed to. The team's already defined with the product owner what those high priority items are. They've already committed to those high priority items and what they feel they can get done in that sprint. Trying to make a mid-sprint change can cause rework and other issues that just don't need to be there. The team is being very adaptive, and let's say you have a 2-week sprint. If they're working and let's say halfway through a sprint, they have 1 week to go before they're releasing that sprint. Trying to add in new requirements or user stories into that sprint and say get them done for the end of the sprint, it's going to cause a lot of havoc because really the plan that's been put in place for how that sprint will be completed and who will be doing what goes up in smoke, and it just becomes chaos. It can cause a lot of problems. Instead, that leadership should recognize that, you know what, yes, this change is important. Let's make it the number one priority in our product backlog. So when we're planning our next sprint, which starts in 1 week, the team can start working on that and get that completed, hopefully by the end of that sprint. So you're only waiting 3 weeks for that change, where in a waterfall, you'd be waiting months and months and months, if not years. So it's really important for that leadership that they don't demand mid-sprint changes, or they really, really think about it. If there's a change that they're pushing through mid-sprint, it better have been talked about and thought about, and it is just the highest urgency. And with doing that, you better be removing user stories that were committed to from the sprint, because the team can't just magically get more done. So enough on that, but one of the big detractors is demanding mid-sprint changes. The next one we're going to talk about is hijacking ceremonies to discuss high priority topics. And I'm sure we've all been in those meetings. We go into a meeting, we've got an agenda, certain things that we want to hit on, or certain elements that we're supposed to be doing as part of that ceremony. And our leadership comes in and basically hijacks the whole conversation and takes it a completely different direction to solve some quote unquote high priority issue or topic. Don't do that. If there's a high priority topic, schedule some other type of meeting to discuss that. Get something else on the calendar. Don't hijack the ceremonies and the meetings that have other agendas and try to, push in your high priority topic. Make a separate meeting to discuss those high priority topics. Another big detractor for leadership is them not being available for demos. Oh, it's so irritating when you do maybe a mid-sprint demo as a team and you're saying, okay, this is where we're at. We just want to make sure we're on the right path. You have people show up, everybody's like, thumbs up, looks good. Maybe there's some feedback, some adjustments you can make. But the leadership team isn't able to come to that demo because they're too busy or what have you. Then they come into the sprint review and they're, wait a minute, this isn't what we want, and they're requesting all this overhaul, not just additional features, but an overhaul to the way the team completed that story or those various stories. And really, leadership just needs to be there for those demos. They need to be providing the feedback. When the team is scheduling feedback demos, be there and provide that feedback. Don't wait until the sprint review when the sprint is over to then go through and say, this isn't going to work for us, and cause a whole bunch of issues for the team. Be available for the demos. The next one is discouraging communication with other teams. Obviously, it's important for the leadership to encourage that cross-team collaboration, right? And that cross-department collaboration. Don't discourage communication with other teams. Don't discourage team members from going and talking to other people. Another big detractor with leadership is removing or changing available resources mid-project. I know sometimes this can't be helped, and organization and businesses change all the time, and it has to be done sometimes. But I've been part of some projects where the development team was not the same week in and week out. And it's hard enough to move forward on a solution with sprints and making sure that everything's aligned when you have a team that's steady. But now go ahead and start removing and adding in different resources and changing resources all the time. It just doesn't work. That team needs to be stable. That team needs to be pretty much cemented into that development team, and those resources need to be there. If something catastrophic comes up, you have to pull a resource out, it happens, but it should be done with a lot of thought and a lot of understanding of how it's going to impact and really negatively impact that project, as that development team is certainly not going to be as effective as they were with their other resources. And last but not least, another big detractor from leadership is them just really not valuing the Agile mindset and not valuing people over processes or communication over documentation. It's important that the leadership team is aware of what the Agile mindset is and what it means. They shouldn't be requesting packets of documentation throughout the project, because that's not the Agile way. It's not the Agile way to create all these documents that have no use. Instead, the team is communicating and working through their problems on a real-time basis. And so the leadership just needs to be aware of that, whether they come from a waterfall or other non-Agile environment or framework. It's important that they are aware of the Agile mindset and they're really embracing it. Okay, so now we've talked about some of those leadership responsibilities as well as detractors. Now let's talk about some of the other roles. So we have the subject matter expert or senior users. These are the people on the business side that have been working in that industry, working in that business for a while. They get it. They know the technology and or they know the processes and or they know the industry and the business. And so here are the responsibility of those folks. The number one thing that they're doing is they're providing their needs and the needs of other users. That subject matter expert or senior user is really helping that product owner understand what the needs are of the organization, of those users of the organization, and helping them to shape that business vision. As well, that SME or subject matter expert senior user is also participating in those sprint reviews. It's important when the team is demoing what they've completed that we have all the right stakeholders in the room and we have all the right people reviewing that and understanding and providing their feedback. As well as just the sprint reviews, it's also that the subject matter expert or senior user needs to attend those feedback demos. If there's mid-sprint demos that are set up or other feedback demos that are set up, it's important that the senior users are there and can provide their feedback to help shape that solution. On that same note, they should be providing continuous feedback on product deliverables. When elements like user stories are being completed and that value is being given to the business at the end of that sprint, they need to be utilizing those various new features or functionality and providing feedback on how it could be even better. What adjustments could be made to it to create even more value? The subject matter expert, the senior user, is on the front line, and so they need to be bringing that feedback so then adjustments can be made. And not only just them getting their personal feedback on product deliverables, they should also be communicating with other users and getting some of their feedback and some of their perspective as to how the deliverable could be even better or what adjustments or changes could be made. And because the subject matter expert or senior users on that front line, they have a unique perspective and a unique context for the user stories and the requirements and the needs that have been defined. They can really help the product owner get their arms wrapped around why the business needs certain things or how various user groups will be interacting with that particular solution deliverable and their perspective of how they'll be utilizing it. And that's really important, not only for the product owner, but also the whole Agile team, just to get that perspective in context. So that subject matter expert senior user can help provide that. Two other things that the subject matter expert or senior user can help with. Number one is if they're requested to do any testing, just to make sure they do it in a timely manner. Sprints are not long, and what happens sometimes is the subject matter expert or that senior user will be asked to test. They'll wait till almost the end of the sprint to test it, then they find an issue, and the team has very little time, if any time, to complete that fix or the change that's needed. That SME and senior user needs to be available pretty quickly to help do testing and get it completed in a timely manner so the team has the necessary time to make adjustments should they be needed. And then finally, the subject matter expert senior users helping to make sure that the user story results are being used properly, that those product deliverables that are coming out of that Agile team are being used by the users correctly, that the users are understanding what they're doing and that they're accurately and appropriately using those new features. And the fifth role that we're going to talk about is the business users. Similar to the senior users, the business users are helping to provide their needs. They're helping to give context and perspective as to what they need and what they want to have within the solution. If those business users are invited to the feedback demos, go. It's very important. If the Agile team is inviting various business users to feedback demos, it's for a reason, that they have a unique perspective or a unique use of that product deliverable, and it's important that they attend and provide their feedback. Obviously, with the business user, you're going to attend, watch, or read training on the deliverables. So those product deliverables that are being created, you need to make sure that you're giving the time of day to that training that is teaching you how to utilize that new stuff. And that's really just to make sure that you're using the product deliverables appropriately to create the value that was determined as part of the whole project. And while they're using those deliverables, they should be giving their feedback. If there's other enhancements or changes that could be made, bugs that they found or adjustments, they should be providing that feedback. And generally, they're going to provide that to their senior user, their subject matter expert, maybe a supervisor. They're going to provide that way, so then that feedback will get over to the Agile team and new user stories can be created or adjustments can be made to help continue to meet the needs of that particular business user. And similar to the senior user, that subject matter expert, if the business users are requested to help with testing, they really should do that as quickly as they can. The team is on a tight deadline. They want to make sure that they have a quality product at the end of that sprint. And so if they're asking those users to do some testing, it'd be awesome if they're able to get to that testing as soon as they possibly can. Throughout this section, you learned about those other 5 Agile roles that are really helping to shape that solution and helping that Agile team move forward and build a quality product that provides a ton of value for that organization. The 5 roles we talked about were the project sponsor, the business leaders, the subject matter expert or senior user, the business users, as well as the technology leaders. So those are those 5 roles. There's one other role I at least wanted to touch on so you're aware of it, and that is the Agile coach. The Agile coach is an experienced Agile practitioner. This could be a consultant, it could be somebody that works within the organization. They're there to help train, guide, and support the full Agile for the organization. So they're experienced in the Agile ways. They understand the ceremonies, they understand the terms, they understand the roles and responsibilities. And so they're helping everyone, all those various roles, know what their roles and responsibilities are within the various aspects of the project. But beyond that, they're also ensuring that the ceremonies that are being done are done correctly according to the guidelines, that the Agile values and principles are being upheld within the organization. So a lot of times an Agile coach is brought in, obviously, as companies are transitioning to Agile. But even after that, a lot of them hang on to an Agile coach just to really sit back, see the full picture, and help guide the organization forward with Agile and make sure that everybody knows what they're doing and point out any type of issues or changes that need to be made for the organization to be better from an Agile perspective or just better from an overall perspective. Now, one point of clarification is we've talked about and taught you about these 5 other Agile roles: the project sponsor, the business leaders, technology leaders, senior users, and business users. And we've taught you these based on kind of a Scrum perspective. We taught you about Scrum and we've tied this into Scrum. But I wanted to make mention that these roles are also the same thing for Kanban, for Scrumban, and other Agile frameworks. These roles are still helping out move the Agile team forward. That project sponsor, while they may not be working with a person titled product owner, they're working to approve the budget and make sure that the needs and objectives of the organization are being met with this particular project. Same with the business leader. So the roles and responsibilities that we've taught throughout this section can be applied regardless of the framework. We just applied it to more of a Scrum looking framework because that's what's familiar to you, because that's what's been taught at this point in the course. So I hope that helps to make sense that those 5 additional roles will play a part regardless of your Scrum or another Agile framework. Now that you have a good understanding